Welcome to this presentation on the Sikh Investors Club. What we're going to do today is go over the kind of main idea, the main plan, so that you're well informed of how exactly we're intending to operate this Sikh Investors Club. First, I wish to apologize for the wait, since we didn't really anticipate it getting as large as it did. The waitlist received hundreds of sign-ups, and particularly from Sikhs with extensive backgrounds in finance and investing. The Bunga's audience also grew substantially during this time, and many people reached out to express support and want to get involved. So our inboxes are pretty much flooded. They were already pretty flooded to begin with, and now they're even more, it's untenable at this point. So apologies if we don't go back to you yet. We will do, hopefully, and hopefully this video here we're producing to help answer many of the questions we got, and also relay what the kind of planning we've been doing behind the scenes as to how exactly we intend to operate the Sikh Investors Club. And whilst we really appreciate all the support and the feedback that we got from everybody, we only really expected about 15-20 people to sign up. So when the waitlist grew as large as it did, it forced us to have to rethink the way to go about doing this. So the initial plan was to set up a kind of informal partnership where we pool funds into a single account and then do monthly sessions to vote how we allocate those funds. And this works for a small group, but the sizes in which we might be dealing with, this makes things a bit tricky legally. Now, I know all the hundreds of people who signed up won't all translate into actual members. Traditional investment clubs are only really expected to be about 20 to 25 people max, according to our research at least. Otherwise, you run the risk of being classed as a collective investment scheme or operating an unregulated fund, which is illegal. And since none of us want to go to prison, we're forced to rethink our strategy slightly. One option was to heavily restrict the club, make it UK only and only admit a few people. But looking through the registrations and the level of experience people and the sheer amount of interest itself, I think it would be foolish, not to say benefit, from the wide range of Sangha that we might potentially have access to. So not only would we have access to talented and experienced professionals, we could use that knowledge that they've been gaining in their professional careers to bring back into the Panth, back into the Sangha, and share it amongst one another. Which is one of the key motivations of Bunga Azadi anyway in general, about learning skills, learning what we can from the experts, bringing those skills back into the Panth to apply for Panthic causes, and this should be no exception. So if we are going to retain this talent and access to expertise, whilst also accommodating as many of you as possible, then quite simply, we have to start simple and gradually add complexity over time. So I'm going to show you some slides now. We'll probably be reading off my notes for the rest of this, but hopefully through the course of this video, we'll communicate exactly how we intend to start simply, and maybe the potentials of where we can get to in the future with the Sangha that we build at this point. So firstly, we've decided to do things in a phased-based approach to ensure that we're compliant to regulations internationally whilst also maximizing the human potential we have in the group. So through a series of phases, we gradually grow the Sikh Investors Club over time, setting robust foundations first to build upon further, and not rushing into things unnecessarily. And fundamentally, many of us do want things to go very big, but we also want things to last. So we're treating this a bit more like a marathon, not necessarily a sprint. So phase one will be an even simpler version of the club that we can get started more immediately, cheaply, and easily. This gives us a lower stakes opportunity to learn and test processes and get the governance of the club right before we start scaling and adding complexity of time. Then in the background, with those of you who we identify with professional experience and skills, we can work out a more long-term model that we can transition to later. And this might include pushing for a regulated fund or asset management service of some kind, or even a means to pool funds and access private market or institutional investments not otherwise easily available as individual retail investors. But this will obviously take more time and capital to get going. Phase 1 can provide us a way to first build a Sangha, refine this vision with the experts amongst them, raise any necessary funds, and headhunt talent from the club who can help spearhead a path to a Phase 2 and beyond. So in the spirit of starting simple, we have decided to start the Phase 1 of Sikh Investors Club as a kind of investment Vichaar group. Use this as an opportunity to share Vichaar, ideas, opinions, education on investing itself and build a Sangha of investors. The way this works is that members will be granted exclusive access to the Sikh Investors Club email newsletter, which works a bit like Substack if you're familiar. Members of the club can submit an investment idea to the admin team, which is first quality checked by a panel of experts before being passed to our editors to post out to all the club subscribers, at which point Members are free to ask further questions, give feedback, and thoroughly scrutinize the idea in the comment sections. Then it is up to each member to make a decision for themselves if they want to pass or invest. These investment ideas can range from theses recommending public equities like individual company stocks or industry-wide thematic ETFs, where a proposer shares their research and predictions, to entrepreneurs who have startups in mind, or even property developers who may have opportunities they are seeking partnerships on. The Sikh Investors Club therefore provides a platform to share such opportunities and stress test them to see if they stand up to scrutiny. Additionally, we will host regular, likely monthly online group calls where posters are expected to present their investment ideas live, and members can also feedback or ask questions about it. We'll also bring in guests to talk about or run workshops on finance and investing in general, as well as host occasional debates on a range of investment topics. And this can include topics like ESG, which I asked about in the sign-up form, as well as things like cryptocurrencies and even just investment philosophy more broadly from Sikh perspectives. As the club grows, we'll also try to arrange in-person meetups as well, so members of the club can network and build valuable connections in their own regions. Whilst we'll charge a membership fee, more info on this later, no money will be collected into a single pool to allocate to investments at this stage. This means that whilst every investment idea can be debated, there won't be any voting since we won't be investing together as a single fund. Instead, it's up to each person to assess each investment, read the comments and the feedback from other members, including the experts, and decide for themselves and themselves only whether they'd like to invest or not. And what this does is keeps us 100% safe regulation-wise and is far easier and quicker to get started. There's no need to trust anyone yet with stewardship of your money. Instead, we can spend time building trust first, which is probably a smarter order of doing things anyway. But don't worry if you feel unsure about how best to invest. The aim of the club is to foster a supportive environment with experts who have extensive backgrounds in investing who can help offer guidance. As a part of this, we'll establish a kind of wiki for members to help get started and archive the best practices when it comes to investing your money in accordance to your own risk appetite. Lastly, this whole phase 1 will also give us an opportunity to further identify talented investors from the club who contribute not only in terms of quantity but quality. With their support, we can build a team who can help map out the next phase of this Sikh Investors Club. So whilst we won't be fund pooling to invest with in the Sikh Investors Club at this stage, we will be charging a membership fee. Why? Well, for a few reasons actually. So Azhar, this economics 101, this is a saying I say quite often, is that if you want something to be sustainable, you must establish an economy for it. Time, effort, and resources are required to start and maintain projects sustainably. And so a portion of the fees will be set aside to cover any potential admin costs. But psychologically, we also want to ensure a level of commitment. If you're paying for something, you're more likely to pay attention, get involved, and keep engaged. It also adds a barrier to entry to hopefully filter out any potential bad actors or trolls. People are less likely to pay money to troll, but will have moderators keeping an eye on things regardless. Additionally, not only will the club be an opportunity for Sikhs to build wealth together, but also support wider Sikh development projects. So Bunga Azadi is a think tank pushing out lots of ideas and potential solutions for problems. And there's a kind of rule in the Bunga, and it's mentioned in the Azadis manifesto as well, that if you point out a problem, you have to suggest at least one solution, otherwise there's no point mentioning it. There's plenty of other people in the Panth crying about problems all the time. What we want to do is be offerers of solutions. And this is why we have been curating Vichaars and creating manifestos, white papers, strategy documents, and more, fleshing out many of our theories and suggestions. But we don't want to be just sharing solutions forever. We also want to be implementing them and putting our theories into practice. However, whilst ideas are cheap, execution is expensive. Therefore, behind the scenes, the Bunga has been setting up a sister institution registered as a community interest company here in the UK. CICs are also known as social enterprises, which are a special type of limited company which exists to benefit the community rather than private shareholders. Our CIC's particular objective is to further the advancement and development of Sikhs and Sikhi itself, to in turn serve all humanity and enable Sabrat Bala, but crucially, strategically and sustainably. Now I know this is kind of vague and I hate vagueness, but the exact mechanisms, structures and processes we have devised to do this are not yet ready to share so openly. However, for those of you familiar with Azadism and the works of Bunga Azadi, you'll likely already be aware of the type of wavelength we're on and how we choose to operate. We have developed a comprehensive grand strategy, a kind of 100-year plan that we have already started progressing, and even this effort is a component of. And in this particular component, it will involve the establishing of a kind of Sikh endowment fund, which I know many of you reached out to suggest we should be attempting as well. So I'm glad to report the work is already underway, and funds we have been collecting thus far from publication sales, Substack subscriptions, direct donations, and now revenue from the club membership fees are being pooled for this purpose. But again, we're not yet ready to openly reveal more on this just yet. And so if you want to know more about it, you have to either become a patron of the Bunga or work with us and contribute your seva, or by now becoming a member of the Sikh Investors Club. Details about our grant strategy will be amongst your exclusive access to information as a member of the club. Additionally, this revenue will also help us cover any costs involved with phase 2 of the Sikh Investors Club as well. And lastly, on a level, we really do need to start encouraging a culture of support for Sikhs and Sikh projects and causes as a Panth. We happily pay subscriptions to Netflix to show its bagwas, but what about paying a subscription to support the Guru Khalsa Panth to fulfill its dharam? How much are you willing to pay to enable the Khalsa of today to revive itself, to rebuild its hard power legally, ethically and effectively, to provide security, defense and justice, to acquire soft power by enabling prosperity for all, to contest spiritual and political tyranny and instead replace it with spiritual and political liberty, just like our gurus did? How much are you willing to pay to flourish environments safeguarded by the Khalsa, where those seeking to pursue mukti or spiritual liberation can do so in peace, free from tyranny and oppression? Well, according to our sign-up form, it looks like the answer to that is about £10 a month. So this is going to be our current membership fee for the Sikh Investors Club, and you can sign up today and join our Sangat and investors by registering through the link in the description or by visiting bungazadi.com/Sikh Investors Club. So yeah, sign up. Let's get this Sikh Investors Club going, because it could be the start of something quite great, I think. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.